My name is Christian Rangen. I'm Norwegian. I reside in Norway, but I work pretty much globally. I do three things. So number one, I do strategy consulting. So I work with big companies and I work with governments on various strategy, ecosystem and innovation clusters, superclusters. So that's a pretty traditional consulting role. Second, I'm business school faculty and I teach in different business schools and programs around the world. And finally, I'm building or trying to build a global community of strategists that all want to change the practice of strategy. And the foundation for this is my research going back almost 10 years, now called Strategy Tools. And here we have developed a number of different new strategy tools or strategy canvases. In total, there's 70. And these are split over 8 different series, and then we have software, and we have training programs, and we have partnership programs, and we have ecosystem development, and we have simulations. We're spending a lot of time with that sort of international community. So consulting, teaching, and ecosystem building.
So if people hear strategy, many people imagine like a long-term planning, 100 pages documents in which you exactly say like a business plan, the next 5 to 10 years, we're focusing on these things. Is this what you think of strategy, or is it a different perspective?
No, I mean that mode of strategy is completely outdated and effectively dead. Now, not all companies, not all executives have gotten that memo yet, but that is over. Strategy is really simple. It is, where do you want to go and how do you get there? Now, if you live in what is a very stable industry with very, very little change, maybe your strategy can be built on traditional principles. But if you live in a much more dynamic and much more changing, much more rapidly changing industry, you have to have a completely different perspective on strategy. In that case, we say you need strategy as transformation. You need to assume that your core business is gone in 5 years or less. You need to open up. You need to master new ecosystems. You need to understand industry shifts. So the whole process, language, skills, tools, and capabilities will have to change. Now, the interesting thing with that sort of story is, so you have the very stable industries and you have the very rapidly changing industries. The problem is there aren't many industries left that are stable. So even the big construction, healthcare, education, big traditional industries, they are now being exposed to the same principles as the other faster changing. So I think there's a massive shift going on in the field of strategy where these old, large, slow industries realize, wow, we now have to work at the speed of more software-driven industries, and it's just a whole new environment for them.
How do you train people or consult or support people to shift from the idea of like long-term planning to this shift of adapting to the situation in the market?
Now, so I think you said it well when you said, how do you support? So we don't do traditional consulting in the most traditional sense. And with all due respect for the big consulting companies of the world, they will come in and they will do the work and they will come up with a recommendation and an implementation. We often suggest to take the decision makers on a strategy journey. And that strategy journey is very much it's a collective learning process where you need to unlearn some stuff, you need to learn some things, and it's only after you've gone through that sort of learning journey process that you can actually work on a more traditional strategy approach. But in our new work, in our new report, and later our new book, we say that transformation is going to become a new normal. So you look at success cases in Europe, like Schibsted, that pivoted away from the paper-based newspaper onto online classifieds and new digital services. They have completed a successful transformation. That is going to be the normal over the next 20 years. And that happens in 3 ways. Number one, it happens in shock. So Nokia is a good example of a shock. I mean, they didn't really see this coming. And by the time they realized it, they were standing on the biggest, most burning platform that you can imagine. Shock. The second is shift. And the shift is also very abrupt, but it's something they positively want to do because they choose to, not because they have to. And a good example there is Adobe. And Adobe effectively said overnight, we're no longer going to sell our software on disks and in paper boxes. We're going full on to the cloud, and we're going to burn the lifeboats, if you will, on that journey. But that was a big shift. And then the second, which is really the ideal, is what we call evolution. And evolution happens over a 10-year period. Good examples of that evolution is, of course, Netflix, that shifted from the postal model to the streaming model. And when I go into companies, they don't know how to manage that transformation, evolution, because they're so stuck with the old model of working. So then we have to work together, we have to build capabilities, we have to bring in new tools, we have to do training programs, we have to do various strategy projects, but we think it's really important that they own it, they do it, and we only support them, so that we embed the new capabilities within the organization. But it is a very interesting field, and more people are starting to wake up to, wow, we need to shift how we even think about strategy. In those simulations, a lot of things happen. And we've run now, over the last year, about 85 different simulations with everything from bachelor students, master students, MBA students, innovation agencies, so government, mid-level managers, corporate strategy, top management and boards, and very fascinating. Some get frustrated, some get very annoyed, some get very quiet, and some get very competitive. But with a little bit of work, everyone wants to learn and master, but also most, so roughly 8 out of 10, are very uncomfortable when big shifts happen and when they are not in control of the company. So we're looking into doing some potential research on what we call the absorptive capacity, or the learning uptake from this, because our sensation, which we still need to validate and prove, is that people really learn a really rich set of experiences and capabilities and skills by these simulations. That's what we observe, and then we gotta double check and prove it. But it's interesting, and the outcome of working with these simulations is, number one, people would often say, wow, we have a lot of gaps in our collective knowledge in this team. Gaps in business model design, gaps in corporate finance, gaps in understanding how innovation works when you sort of get into the open innovation space. Second, I felt very uncomfortable because I didn't know this stuff, I didn't master this stuff. So that's a really powerful emotion, and we spend a lot of time discussing that in the debrief. We say, where this company is going in the future, you have so many new areas you're going to open up. And if you felt uncomfortable in this simulation for a day, imagine when you now have to go out and build and test platform-based business models that you've never done before. And that often reveals, yes, that's very uncomfortable, and we don't. Finally, it really provides what we call the collective aha moment around strategic assumptions. And this is probably, from a professional point of view, the most interesting. Strategic assumptions are invisible, they're hidden, but they're very, very strong. An example of a strategic assumption would be, we don't have money. And that just becomes a fact. So the teams will go around the table until at least one of them had gone bankrupt. And as a facilitator, I will ask, well, why did you choose to go bankrupt? And they look at me with disgust and say, well, we don't have any money. It's like, no, this is true. But there's a big pile of money sitting right here called the bank. And how did you work to achieve access to funding through loans, bonds, or other basic corporate finance activities? And very often they say, we didn't know we were allowed because we're so used to sitting here. And as you, as an organization, move into a lot of new space, you have to open up and understand we have to navigate very differently in these new areas. So it's a very interesting question. We do a lot of work, tools, simulation, programs to build capabilities and confidence around new things and new areas.
You answered almost all of my questions, even though I didn't ask them, so that was wonderful.
Well, you keep asking, and I'll try to answer them.
I would just have to be aware of the time slots, because the next is... But one more questions I have.
And I'll answer short, yes.
You said, so people often had surprises. They were in unexpected situations. Yeah. Now, how did they feel about these unexpected situations? And how do you think can you prepare them to be comfortable with unexpected situations that might occur?
That's a great question. So, in the transform strategy and transformation simulation, we have actually designed exactly for this. Handling new knowledge, handling new tools, and trying to handle new situations. And we do it in different ways. But what we observe is we can put people into 4 categories. Number one is the HR person, and the HR person kind of pulls away from the business side and becomes much more of a support mechanism. He or she will say, okay, should I get some coffee for the team? Is everybody doing okay? I think this was very difficult. How are you guys feeling? Nothing wrong, but it's very much a sort of step back. Second, it's the business person, or the COO. And the CEO is very finance focused. And he or she counts the money, counts future revenue, counts what we call the 10-year profit profile. Has a pretty good understanding of the money, but has no view on the table and all the dynamics that's going on. Because that's the comfort spot. So he or she will pull back and say, this is what I'm comfortable doing. That's a big problem. Third, we have the CEO, and the CEO is really internally focused. This is our company. We have money, we have assets, we have business models, we have partnerships, we have a lot of resources, and it's quite complex. So this is my area of comfort. And then we have the fourth person, which there are very, very few of them, and that's what we call the strategist. Now, around the 2-hour mark, something happens, and the strategist goes, we're not going to win this simulation by focusing internally. We need to look externally. We need to understand what are the other teams, companies trying to do. What kind of resources do they have? What kind of collaborations could we set up? And you can actually see that strategist think, boom, lights go up, eyes go up, and then he or she has a big problem to get the rest of the team aligned on that. Now, when we discuss that and debrief that, we say, what did you do, or what kind of capabilities or perspectives do you have? Often what they say is, in real life, I'm the troublemaker. I'm the guy with the ideas. I'm the guy with different perspectives. I'm the guy that asks questions, and the others don't really appreciate it. And they go like, yeah, that's true. I think we need to develop more of these strategists to be comfortable with the unknown, to look not inside but outside, and to be much better at exploring options as opposed to counting the money.